Hi all! It's November, which is both a really exciting and kind of intimidating and terrifying month for a lot of writers. It's National Novel Writing Month, and to celebrate, NaNoWriMo, which is a nonprofit organization, holds a major writing event where you try to write a 50,000 word novel from November 1st to November 30th, which is terrifying but also so much fun. I'm including a link to NaNoWriMo in the description so you can sign up if you want to try it out or if you just want to find out more about it. What I wanted to focus on in this video is how to approach NaNoWriMo if you suffer from mental health issues. I've had depression and anxiety and OCD since I was around 8 years old, and I've been doing Nano for several years now. I finally won. I'm so excited to have finally done it. You win if you actually meet the goal of 50,000 words in a month, and I never got even close to it before, so I was so happy that this worked. Part of the way I did finally achieve this was by trying to be really mindful and figure out some tips that could help me. And I worked on it with therapists, I worked on it just through a lot of self-help. And I wanted to share those tips with you in case they could make NaNoWriMo something that's a little more doable or a little less stressful or something you can go for if you haven't yet. So let's dive in. My first tip is to just acknowledge how hard it is. If you're anything like me, it's super easy to be very dismissive of anything you go through if you suffer from mental illness. I'm very prone to being like, oh, that wasn't even a hard thing, that wasn't difficult at all. Of course you failed. You didn't fail because it's hard. You failed because you're terrible and you're weak and you're not good enough and you can't do anything. It's really easy for me to get in that kind of headspace and spiral. So I think it's super helpful to actually just acknowledge what a difficult thing this is even outside of mental illness. You could have a completely healthy mind and a very stable life and have everything set up for you to succeed at something like this, and it's still a very challenging thing. That's really the point of NaNoWriMo, is it gives you this almost impossible goal to try to just see how far you can push yourself and what you can do. So I think it's important to remember that this is a ridiculously hard thing. Everyone's kind of suffering through the whole month, but kind of in a fun, commiserating way. So if you acknowledge how difficult it is going in, it can make you be a little more gentle with yourself when you have a hard time. Because you probably are going to have a hard time. This is just a difficult thing to do. And then if you throw mental illness on top of it, it can be incredibly hard. And I think that's also an important thing to recognize. Again, if you're like me, it's very easy for me to be dismissive of my own mental illness, and I tend to be like, well, this shouldn't affect me. I don't want it to affect me. I don't want to be defined by it. You don't have to define yourself by it to acknowledge that it's hard and that it might make things a little bit more difficult for you. That's okay to do. That's not you setting yourself up for failure. That's not you being overly negative or dark or trying to give yourself a pass. I think it's just important to admit that this is a difficult thing. It is a challenge. And that way you may not spiral so much when you come up across difficulties with it. Number two is kind of a difficult thing to do because it's such the focus of a lot of people when they approach Nano, but try not to focus too much on word count. Yes, you're trying to reach 50,000 words in a month. Yes, that means you're writing over 1,600 words a day on average. But the word count and the actual specific number you get to isn't really the focus. The focus of NaNoWriMo is to try to bring more creativity into your life, to try to take your writing more seriously, to try to learn how to make time for yourself and see that you can fit this stuff into your life if you want. Once you come even close to writing 50,000 words in a month, it starts seeming a lot more reasonable to write at a more sustainable, normal, average pace throughout the rest of the year. Especially if you go from writing nothing to writing 50,000 words or even 25,000 words or 5,000 words, just having a number to it and seeing how much you've done can really make it seem more feasible to write as a rule. And also it can kind of train you to learn, oh, okay, these are times that I like to write. These are ways you can make time to write. It kind of trains you to treat writing as something to take seriously and schedule into your life, because especially if you're not a professional writer, if it's not your career, it's really easy to feel like you're being frivolous by doing it, and Nano kind of teaches you that you're not, that it's okay to make time for something that you're passionate about. Not focusing on word count also leads into my third tip, which is to really embrace a community that springs up during NaNoWriMo. Writing is a very isolating experience a lot of the time. It's something you tend to do by yourself. It's a world you build in your head, and then you build yourself on a page while being silent, often while in a room or an office completely by yourself. And then on top of it, mental illness can be a really isolating thing. It's so easy to feel like you're the only person that has what you do or that goes through the kind of struggles you go through. And that's just not true, but it kind of tends to trap you in your own head and make you feel even more by yourself. And NaNoWriMo is a great way to break out of that. They have message boards on their website. There's lots of in-person meetups you can do for your area. A lot of those are set up on NaNoWriMo's website. You can find people to go to a Starbucks or library and all write together. So even if you're not speaking, you're around other people and kind of around that energy. Almost every social media community has a segment that is focused on NaNoWriMo. For instance, on Twitter, you can join the hashtag writing community hashtag. It's super active. It is full of thousands and thousands and thousands of writers that are on there 24/7, and a lot of them are doing NaNoWriMo, and a lot of them are super receptive. They'll reply a lot, they'll talk to you. And if you're like me and you're really shy, sometimes it's nice just to even lurk in those. If you're not quite up to engaging with people yet, or actually replying to them or asking questions, you can just read and kind of feel like a part of it without actively participating. And that works for the mental health issues as well. A lot of these writers also struggle with mental health issues, so you're probably going to be able to find someone else who's going through something similar than you, who maybe has a hard time getting motivated writing because they're depressed, or maybe they get really anxious about not meeting their goals, or maybe seeing other people's goal counts make them really anxious. Maybe they get really OCD about what they're doing. There's almost certainly another writer doing Nano who's going through a similar thing, and they'll be able to talk to you. Also, I'm including my NaNoWriMo buddy name in the description. You can make buddies on NaNoWriMo and connect with them. You can message them and talk to them. Definitely feel free to add me if you're wanting to try doing this. I love connecting with other writers and talking to people. I would be very happy to talk to anybody if you want, so definitely feel free to add me. And don't be shy, even though I'm super shy. We'll try not to be shy together. Kind of what Nano is just breaking out of all of our shells. But taking advantage of that community can really remind you what it's about, because if you start spiraling about, I'm not reaching my word goals, or I haven't been able to write every day, or I just don't know when to find the time to write, you're going to find other people who are going through similar things. They're going to buck you up. They're going to make you realize you're not a failure. They can kind of drown out that negative, mentally ill way of thinking we tend to have about ourselves, which is just nice. Plus, like, I'm very introverted. I like that writing is a private thing most of the time, but it's really cool to kind of connect with people once in a while and find out you're not just writing in a vacuum, you're not completely alone. I really love it. My next tip, and of course this is also a very hard one to do, especially if you're prone to like perfectionist way of thinking or being really critical of yourself, but do not focus on writing quality. It's very important to remember that a first draft is very rarely good. I'm used to only seeing very finished, polished, edited writing that you don't know how many years may have gone into that novel you're reading. Like if you pick up a novel in a bookstore, someone may have put 15 years of their life into that novel. You don't know what draft that is. You don't know how different that is from their first draft. Very, very few authors can just whip out a perfect first draft. I'm sure there are some people that do that. There are anomalies and everything, but that is definitely not the standard. And even if you're good at doing a first draft as a rule, I wouldn't expect that every single time you write. And especially something like a novel, it's so huge, there's so many moving parts, there's so many different elements of it that it's really difficult to get that right on the first try. That is pretty near impossible, and you really have to think of it as much as you can as just a brain dump. Like you're getting the ideas out of your head onto the page, because a lot of times you just can't see what works until it's on the page. If you're writing at first it's dry or overly flowery, or if it's very incoherent, or if there's a lot of grammar errors or any of that, that's fine. That really does not matter. Like you can't fix something until it's already written. So you just have to work on getting that on the page. And that's kind of where the whole idea of Nano, of like starting with a fresh idea that you've not written already and getting it just done within 1 month is so helpful, because it's really focused on just the act of finishing. It's not meant on finishing a great novel or a perfect novel or a polished novel or something that is ready for publishers. It's just about actually getting it out of your head and onto the page and ready to be worked with. My next tip is to ask for support, and that's with both writing and with any mental health issues you may have during this. And the community that springs up around NaNoWriMo is so helpful and positive and encouraging and very, very vibrant and alive. They are very quick to want to help you. If you have questions about writing, if you have technical questions, if you want examples for types of scenes to read, or if you just don't even know the right word that you want to use for something, like you can almost always find somebody who's going to want to help you out with that. It's easy for me to feel selfish doing that kind of thing. I'm like, oh, I'm stealing time from them, or I'm distracting them from their own project. But honestly, it can make you feel so good to help somebody else out, that it can then make you feel more motivated and positive, because you feel useful, you feel helpful, you feel like you're doing something. So you may actually be helping the other writer be more productive by letting them help you. And when it comes to any mental health issues, I think, again, it is important to recognize that this is a hard thing. And especially if you're prone to having a hard time being motivated, or being very anxious, or being very hard on yourself because you're a mental illness, this is it's a big challenge. I think it's good to be aware of that, the fact that it may be hard for you. Like a lot of times whenever I do anything that's really good for myself, and really positive, my mental illness will fight back twice as hard. So I think it's important to be aware of that. Like if you're seeing a therapist, let your therapist know you're going to be doing this, and that way they can be available if you start having a hard time, or if you start doubting yourself, or you start getting really self-critical. Like, it's okay to go to them for help and talk about this. If you have friends that also you're comfortable talking about your mental illness with, or your family, definitely be open. Let them know if you're having a hard day, and that should be true anytime, obviously, and I know how hard that is. I'm very prone to just bottling that all up inside, but it's really, really good to get that out, to get support, to let other people know what is going on. And a lot of writers suffer from mental illness problems. It's really common. So you can definitely find people, again, on these social media forums you can go and talk to who are probably going through similar things. Like, it's very unlikely that there's not another writer who is also suffering from the same kind of mental illness things you're going through somewhere online that you can talk to and connect with, and maybe someone who's already learned some ways of coping that might particularly help you, or just people who will be there to listen or say they get it. Like, don't be afraid to reach out. And in a more practical way too, like, I know that me personally with my mental illness, I'm very prone to taking on more than I should, partly because I feel so guilty for being mentally ill. Like, I feel really bad putting my friends through having to deal with me having mental illness, putting my partner through that, putting my roommates through that. Like, it makes me feel terrible that I have to ask for help, or that I feel like I'm annoying, and they swear that I'm not, but obviously that's where my head goes. So I tend to take on more to make up for that. I'm like, oh, well, I'll do most of the chores, or I'll do most of the cleaning, or let me do all these favors for you, or I just fill my schedule with stuff that is primarily focused on other people. NaNoWriMo is a really great chance to use it as a trial run for figuring out what works for you and making more time for writing in your life. And it may be simple things. It may be something like letting your friends know, hey, from this time until this time every day, I need you to not text me or call me because I'm going to be focusing on my writing and I need to be very, very focused. Maybe something like having to ask your roommate or your partner to do a little extra chores throughout the month, and that may make you feel really, really guilty. That would make me feel incredibly guilty anytime I have to ask for any kind of help like that. But something I found is that, especially if you have mental health problems and people who care about you can see how sad you are or how hopeless you may get, and if they care about you, they should be really happy to see you doing something that makes you happy, that's good for you, that you get excited about, that you get passionate about. That should make them happy too. Normally, people that care about you will be really happy to help you with this because they'll recognize it as a big goal and a big thing you're doing. And I tend to find that a lot of people that aren't writers tend to get really excited to have a way to help you, because if they can't write a book or they don't want to write a book, but they see you trying to do this thing, it's a way for them to feel involved and to know they're helping, and they tend to get really excited about that. Like, yeah, of course I'll do the dishes for you because, like, it's going to help write the great American novel. Like, they can really have a fun time with it sometimes. And you can always offer to do something for them afterwards. Like, if you realize that you've been taking on more than your fair share, this can be a good chance to realize that and kind of work out a way to balance it out so it's more even all the time. And if that's not true, if you don't take on more than your fair share and everything is already fair, but you're kind of having to ask people to take on a little more, you can do something to thank them for that afterwards. Like, whether it's baking a cake, or you can agree to do something for them later, like you can pick up one of their chores for a while or something. Like, it's okay to ask for help. People normally want to help you with this kind of thing. If someone cares about you, they should want you to succeed in what you're passionate about. And if you know you do it for them, they should be willing to do that back for you. It doesn't mean be selfish and take advantage of people and just completely like avoid all responsibility for the entire month. It's not that. Nano is really about trying to find a way to fit writing into your life. That doesn't mean give up your whole entire life because of it, but it does mean that you may have to find some new creative ways to make space for your writing, and that may involve asking for help from other people sometimes. Another tip that I found that really helps is to reward yourself during NaNoWriMo, and that doesn't mean only rewarding yourself if you meet the 50,000 word goal. I think it's really important to recognize anything that you think is going to be particularly hard for you. Like, if you've never signed up for NaNoWriMo because just the idea of signing up really, really scares you, if you sign up, reward yourself for that. Like, even if you don't do any writing for the whole rest of the month, if that's all you've done is sign up, that is a step in the right direction, and that deserves to be celebrated. And when I say reward yourself, it doesn't be a big thing. It doesn't be, spending a lot of money on yourself or doing something extravagant. It can be something little. It can be something as little as, letting yourself watch your favorite TV show, or playing your favorite song, or taking 10 minutes to cuddle your cat and have a cup of cocoa. It could be buying something from the dollar store that makes you smile. Like, just whatever it is, let yourself do something that makes you feel a little spoiled and special and like you're taking care of yourself. And the nice thing about this is that even if you don't get to 50,000 words, it's great because all month long you'll be practicing rewarding yourself whenever you do something hard. Like notice whenever something hard comes up that you didn't expect to be hard. Like maybe it's really, really hard for you to get past writing 100 words a day. Maybe it's really hard for you to work on the weekends when you're normally used to having the time off. Like maybe it's really hard for you to not reread what you wrote the day before and write that. As you progress throughout Nano, notice whatever is hard for you and start making a note to reward yourself when you succeed at those things. Like if it's having a hard time actually putting your word count in because you're upset that you didn't meet your word goal. If you put your word count in, even if you didn't meet your goal for the day, reward yourself for doing that if it was a scary thing to do. It doesn't matter how small it is because any victory is a good victory. Any step in the right direction is a good step. And the more you reward yourself, the more you're going to get aware of the small steps you take towards succeeding and the little things you do that are good. Because it's very easy when you have depression or anxiety to just focus on what you've done wrong or what you haven't finished, what you haven't completed. And when you let yourself take the time to notice the little things you do that are good and constantly reward yourself, it's a lot easier to drown out that voice and be like, no, I know I've been succeeding. I know I'm proud of myself for these other things. You don't have to focus on just the big goal, just reward yourself and celebrate along the way. My next tip is to remember that there is a Camp Nano every April that is different than NaNoWriMo. Instead of being a 50,000 word goal, you get to set your own word goal. It can be any goal you want. It can be like, 50 words, or it can be, a word a day. It can be as low as you want it to be. It can be as high as you want it to be. And a lot of the restrictions that count technically for NaNoWriMo, which, don't get too stressed out about that. Again, it's about adding creativity to your life, so don't get too hung up on the rules. But technically, you're supposed to be working on like a new project from scratch for NaNoWriMo. But for Camp Nano, none of that applies. You can write anything you want. It doesn't have to be a novel, doesn't have to be fiction, doesn't have to be something new. You could just be editing something you've already written before. You could be writing copy for your website. You could be writing song lyrics. Literally anything at all goes for Camp Nano. It has a lot of the benefits of NaNoWriMo still. It's still an active community. It still gives you pep talks. It still lets you set your word goals and see your progress on a chart to like really get a visual of how much you've done. It has a lot of those benefits. It's just on a smaller scale and with less pressure and less stress. So if NaNoWriMo is too much to handle, if it's too much pressure, if it's too big of a word goal, if it's not the kind of writing you want to do, if you're not interested in writing a novel and you really want to try something else, then Camp Nano may be more right for you. Because that's the thing, it's important to remember that while it is a good thing to challenge yourself when you have mental health problems, there's a difference between challenging yourself in a way that is healthy and useful and just pushes you in the right direction, and challenging yourself in a way that is too draining on you and will just make your mental health symptoms much worse without actually moving you in the right direction. And it's really important to listen to yourself. Again, if you're seeing a therapist, you can be really open about this and talk about signs to watch for that this may be too much for you. It may just not be right for you this year, maybe right for you years from now, maybe right for you when your life circumstances are different. That's okay. Like, it's okay if you need something a little more low-key. There is no failure in that. That's literally why Camp Nano exists, to be there for you if NaNoWriMo isn't really your thing, isn't really your speed. And there's literally no shame in that. So if you're upset because you feel like you're missing out on the NaNoWriMo environment and the good things you can get from it, just remember that there is a lower key way to do it. It is a little smaller, it's a little less active, but it still has like 85% of the benefits, 90% of the benefits. There's really a lot there. And so definitely keep that in mind as something to do if this doesn't really work for you. My next tip is one that it's super hard for me, but I think it's super important to do, especially if you do have mental health problems, is to brag. And I don't mean in a way that makes other people feel bad or makes you seem superior to other people or puts anybody else down, but just in a way to say that you are super proud of what you've done and you think it's a huge accomplishment and you are acknowledging that out loud. And you can do this to your friends. You can let your friends know how proud you are. You can post about it on Twitter, on Nano's forums. You can email your buddies on NaNoWriMo to talk about it and just brag about it. And like the rewards, it doesn't have to be just bragging when you reach a 50,000 word. If you do that, it can be bragging because, oh, I actually signed up this year, or for the first time ever, I wrote every day in a row for a week, or I met my word count 2 days in a row and I've never done that before. Definitely brag about that because those are really exciting moments. But just like rewarding yourself, when you do this more often, you're going to get more aware of the things you're doing and the things you're accomplishing and seeing more of the positives of yourself instead of just the negatives. And you don't have to do this out loud with other people. Like if you're way too shy about it, or if you don't have people in your life that are supportive of you, and I definitely understand that, then there's something you can do just to yourself. Go in the bathroom and look in the bathroom mirror, and even if you want, play some music so nobody can overhear you, and just talk to yourself for 30 seconds, for 2 minutes, just telling yourself how proud you are and what a badass you are and how proud you are of doing this accomplishment, what a hard thing it was to do. Like, and it doesn't have to be for the major accomplishment, it can be for any accomplishment along the way. Like, any small accomplishment can be major. And that may feel like a silly thing to do, but think about how often when you have mental health issues, you tend to berate yourself negatively. Like, I know I looked in the mirror and told myself I'm terrible 10,000 times. I think I can afford to a couple of times look in the mirror and tell myself how great I am. And you can too. You really need to be proud of yourself and brag and let yourself experience all the highs of this as well as the hard parts of it. Like, you're probably going to be feeling the hard parts. You're going to be noticing what a challenge it is, or what a slog it is, or how difficult it can be to work this in every day or to write on days you don't feel like it. But you may not let yourself feel the accomplishments and the good parts. You have to really work hard to let yourself feel that, especially if it's not the way your brain is really wired to think. And my final tip is just to remember that you can always try again. If you didn't meet your goals this year, if you didn't write at all this year, if you wrote for 2 days and completely dropped off, that's completely fine. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean you're never going to be a writer, or you can't succeed, or you're too mentally ill to ever write or do something like this. NaNoWriMo is always there. It's always going to be there waiting for you the very next year. Camp Nano is always going to be there if you want something a little more fun and laid back and less stressful. The writing communities online do always exist. It may be a little harder to find the rest of the year because Nano just puts them like right in the spotlight, but you can find them. They are out there. They do exist. It's so easy when you're depressed or you're anxious to think that anything that doesn't go right or doesn't go the way you want it to go is what your whole life is going to be like. It's so easy to think that if right now, this November, you're not able to do this thing, it means that you're never going to be able to do this thing. You're never going to be healthy enough. You're never going to be able to make the time for it. And that's just not true. I didn't reach even halfway to my Nano goal pretty much every year until the year I finally won it. And things change. Like, one year you may be healthier, one year you may be more supported, one year you may just have less going on your plate so you can really focus on something like this. One year you may have an idea, you're way more excited about writing, and that's what gets you finally able to do it. It's just so important to remember that this Nano is not every Nano, and this you right now isn't necessarily the you every year that's going to come. You can still change, you can still grow, you can still advance. And this isn't saying that, you know, if it turns out that NaNoWriMo isn't for you, that also doesn't make you a failure. Like, don't let yourself get scared out of it. Like, if it's something you really want to do and that really seems to be up your alley and seems like something you really, really, really love, and you're just talking yourself out of it, that's different. You know, really try not to do that. Try to focus on the fact that you can try again. But if you realize that, oh, I don't like actually counting my words, I don't like thinking of my writing in that way, or I don't like setting a particular goal for my writing, or I don't like writing every day, that is okay too. Like, this doesn't have to be the writing model that works for you. Nano may not be your kind of thing, and that's completely okay. That doesn't mean you're a bad writer or a failure. Also, if you find out you just don't really like writing, or this is your first time really committing to writing, and you're like, you know what, I don't enjoy this, I prefer reading, or I only want to write for a hobby and I don't want to do anything this major, or maybe I don't like writing novels and I want to write something completely different. That's also completely okay. That doesn't make you a bad writer, it doesn't make you a bad person. Everybody's a little bit different, everybody has a different creative process, everybody has different things that get them going, and that's an okay thing to realize. Like, realizing that is a big thing. But if it's just that you're talking yourself out of it because you're scared, or you think you're not good enough, or you think you don't deserve something like this, definitely realize that you can always try again, and it's always going to exist. It's always there for you to just pick right back up if you want to. And that's about it. I hope these tips can help you and make Nano a little more exciting, a little less stressful, and a little more fun, especially if you do have mental health problems. If you have any tips to share, I'd love to hear it. I'm always looking for more advice. I'm always looking for more tips on this kind of thing. I am definitely not got it perfect by any means. I'm particularly bad about writing every single day. I have a tendency of not writing for like 3 days and then feeling like I have to write 5,000 or 6,000 words in one day and getting very overwhelmed. That's a really big thing for me. But I have found that these tips have helped me a lot. They've helped me approach Nano with a very different attitude, and I hope they can help you too, so you don't have to go through the trial and error I did to come to these points. I'll be back very soon with another video. I'm probably going to be doing a lot more videos about Nano and writing throughout this month, because it's probably going to take over my brain completely for the next 30 days. Until then, be well, be happy, and get creative. Thanks so much.